Welcome to From the Deep. I am Mike the Finder, and with me, as always, is my buddy Book of Brett.
Hello.
Today we are going to be talking about the 2021 film The Manor. This is, I believe, a Prime exclusive because it's an Amazon original. Is that right?
Yeah, it is a Prime exclusive.
So, do you want to give us a little rundown of this before we really get into this here?
Yeah, so this is basically about Barbara Hershey plays an elderly woman who's kind of coming into the silver. Is it the golden years or the silver years that are your last years? Silver, right?
I think it's silver.
Okay. Either way, she's getting old. She's getting old, and she ends up with Parkinson's, and she ends up getting put into a nursing home where she's haunted by some type of entity that's made out of tree bark, and she basically starts finding out dirty little secrets that are going on at the nursing home.
It sounds so stupid when you say it like that.
Well, my opinion of this movie is very complex. It's complex.
Okay, so I think we have similar emotions about it then.
Yeah.
Let's just
I
start
had a
out.
feeling we would. I was watching this going, I think I know how Mike feels about this.
Let's start out just with your general thoughts. What were your general thoughts here?
At first, I was totally on board with this movie. I really liked it. It hit me hard because of the relationship between the grandmother and the grandson and the whole nursing home thing.
Yeah,
and
me
so
too.
that hit a little personally. And so I was like really on board with this. And then as it went along, I just slowly started coming off board. And by the end of it, I was a little, again, I was a little confused emotionally because there were parts of it that I really liked, but then like without jumping too far ahead, the ending was just very meh for me. And so and as it went along, it felt like a Cure for Wellness, if you've ever seen a Cure for Wellness.
I have, yeah.
And the longer I watched this, the more it didn't feel like as much of an original idea as it started out feeling like.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. Here's my thing with it, though. I had almost the exact reaction to the halves of it. I really disliked the first half, and I was watching the first half of this movie thinking, this is really slow. This is an hour 20 movie, and the first half of this is really slow. I was kind of worried about it for the first 35 minutes or so. Because I honestly checked how long the runtime was probably 3 times in the first 35 minutes. And that first 35 minutes...
never a good sign.
That first 35 minutes it's a real drag.
Yeah.
Just in all
it's
ways.
mostly just sad.
Yeah, it's
like-
really
like the-
sad. It's also really slow. And you put those two things together, and I'm over here sitting there like, I thought I was on board for this horror movie.
Well, and that's the thing is like when I say the ending, I was not on board. I don't want to jump too far ahead. It's not that I didn't like the ending. It's just the ending felt very rushed to me. Like the last like 15, 20 minutes of this movie just feels like they were just haphazardly piecing it together to bring it to a conclusion.
Well, so it's so weird that you said like as it went along, you lost interest, because as it went along for me, I gained interest. It felt really slow at the beginning, and every time she laid down to go to bed, I would like, okay, here we go. Like, finally something is about to happen. The other thing, this movie's kind of opposite from what Malignant was for me, because it took me longer than I'm proud of, like you said last time. It took me longer than I'm proud of to figure out kind of what was happening.
Right.
And I feel like that might actually be a good thing for me.
Right.
And it might have been why it kept my interest for so long.
Right. And that's the thing is like there were cool aspects of the movie, but the problem for me is that as it went along, I feel like there were just a lot of cliches driving it along, and
yeah, that's true.
As far as the nursing home aspect goes, and the elder abuse with the people working there, and some kind of conspiracy with people working there, and I felt like it started to rely on cliches the more it went along. Whereas at the beginning, it felt like more of a, maybe not a totally original idea, but a fun new twist on things. Because like I haven't seen a movie like this before that was a horror movie. Like the closest thing I can compare this to in non-horror is like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like it almost had that vibe of like being in the hospital and her not belonging there and wanting to get out. But it felt like the more it went along, I felt like I'd seen most of this already in A Cure for Wellness. And so that's why I say as it went along, I lost interest in it, but not entirely, because like I said, I did not hate this movie, but I definitely, as it went along, I was like, okay, I've seen this before. Okay, I've seen this before. It's a cool concept, but I've seen this before.
Right. That might be my biggest problem with horror in general right now. That every time I watch something, I feel like, okay, that's like this, and this, where it's a mixture of this and that. And
it's like horror's becoming the Avengers or Marvel movies, where it's just kind of the same thing
to be
over
fair,
and over again.
In the 80s, like, people were ripping off slashers, and the reason the whole slasher boom happened is because people were just ripping each other off and people building on other people's ideas, right? And that's kind of what creativity, especially in the world of the internet, is other people building off of other people's ideas. And so it's very apparent to me when I'm watching something new, oh, this guy's a fan of this, and this. I think it's Axel Carolyn. She wrote and directed this, so there's definitely something to be proud of there. This is a very well put together film.
Right. It was shot really well.
I think where you lose me is the ending. Because like I said, I was actually gaining interest the further I got along into it. And it felt like I don't think it was rushed. Here's my problem with it. We're going to go into some spoilers here early, I guess, because that's just I need to talk about this.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's what's happening. But my problem with the ending is not necessarily that it felt rushed. My problem was this entire movie, you're setting up this almost moral high ground that you're above what these people are doing to everyone else. And in the last 4 minutes of this film, you completely tweak and go left of kind of what the entire film has been saying the whole time, is that people are not treated well in these homes, and because it's about aging and stuff like that, you're kind of almost setting your moral baseline with that. And then at the very end, you switch what the entire movie has been about, and she just joins them without really thinking about it too much. And the grandson immediately flips on a dime and becomes a bad person. Right. And it's
and that's why I say it felt rushed, though, because there was never this like tipping point. There was never this moment where it starts with her being against it, like you said, but there's never this moment, or there's never moments of her changing her mind or evolving towards what she inevitably chooses to do, and that's why it felt rushed to me.
I don't think it. For me, that's not a thing of being rushed. That's a I want to get from A to Z, and not knowing how to get from A to Z is the problem. I think what you're go ahead, finish your thought.
I was going to say what I thought. Where I get a little where it becomes complex for me was because I didn't like the fact that she just flips on a dime and now she's on board with everything that she previously was so against.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it made it feel more human to me, because I feel like if you gave that option to most people, they're gonna jump on board with it. And so it's this really like wait, does that say too much about me?
When I was watching it, I kept having the thought of who the hell would want to live forever. That was my thought.
I think it's kind of like becoming a vampire. It's really cool if you're in your 20s or your 30s.
Right.
But if you're super duper old and you have to experience being that old all the time except for one night, what is it, every single night, but it's like, but when do you sleep?
That was
basically a vampire.
That was my thought too. I think because they no longer had pain or anything else, they don't need to sleep anymore. But it was never addressed. So, but again, I don't know.
So that's where that's where I am with the ending. Like, part of me hates how quickly they just flip flop with their ideas and their moral standings.
Right.
But the other part of me really thinks like, okay, if you're at that age and you're facing the end of your time, I don't know what that's like. So I don't know if, when I'm, oh my God, if I make it to 80, we'll see. But if I'm 80 years old, I don't know what it feels like. I can't empathize with the feeling of being that old and not wanting to get older or die.
Right.
And so that's where I felt like it made it seem more, it made her seem like less of a morality superhero, and it made her feel more like a regular person who's dealing with a very tough decision.
I can totally see where you're coming from with that. I think the problem is the story is really good. The idea is really good. I think the fact that the tree plays such a big part in what this movie is, but they barely bring it up. They show it to you one time, and then at the end, it takes place near it. And I guess, to be fair, the creature's part of the tree. But I thought that idea was really, really cool. And I loved the way that the guy at the end ends up kind of screwing himself over because he's been such a horrible person the whole time. They also didn't address at the end what the woman that was running the nursing home, who was his granddaughter or great-granddaughter or something, they never addressed how she took it. Unless that's just something I missed.
That's a good point. No,
that would have been cool to see.
They just kind of skipped over it.
Right. So I would have been really interested to see what that was like. We also never find out what happened to the nurse necessarily. I guess she's dead.
I think it's implied that they killed her off.
Yeah,
I think that was okay. I think
that's fair.
Yeah, when she sees the necklace in the closet, I feel like that's them kind of saying, "Oh, she's gone."
I just would have liked a more concrete answer to that. I
would have definitely liked to see more of the creature. Like,
that's the other thing too. Yeah,
I think it was a really, really cool concept for a creature, and that's the other part where I'm like kind of conflicted with this because I don't really know how to categorize this movie because it's not technically a creature feature.
No, I mean, I think it's just a psychological horror. I really thought watching the first half of this was going to be about mental illness and dementia and all of that. And that's what I mean when I say you're sort of like you're almost juking against this whole idea that you've set up at the very end. Like you've spent the whole movie sort of saying something without actually saying something, and then you build to this end part, and then you completely like dismember everything that you've been doing and setting up as far as morally and the story and all of this stuff, and at the end you just tear it all apart. That's the biggest issue I have with it, and it's a great idea, but the problem that I kept running into every time I thought about it was that great idea is not served correctly or in the best way that it could have been, I think.
Right.
If that makes any sense. Like, it's a fantastic idea, but the way they actually attacked it was kind of strange. Right. So, I go ahead.
It's very clearly a comment on... what I think it was commenting on the most was more elder abuse than just mental illness.
Yeah,
I think
also
that was
true.
I think that was really the thing they were going for.
I think it's a little bit about both, I think.
Yeah. Well, and there are moments where I feel really, really bad for, I can't remember her name, just grandma. I feel there are moments where I feel really bad for her, and like my heart like was reaching out for like these people that are in this movie, like the elderly people in this movie. And I think that by feeling that way, it really shows what they were going for as far as, how we treat elderly people when they're suddenly an inconvenience to us.
Right. Well, that's why, again, all of what you're saying, I feel like is completely accurate, but that's why the ending is so terrible.
Right.
I think all of those things are why the ending is so terrible. And on one hand, as I was watching the ending, I was going, that's awesome. You never see a movie do this. And then as I woke up this morning, because I watched this last night, as I woke up this morning, I was thinking about it, and I was just kind of like, it's cool in the moment, but the more I think about it, the more it just doesn't make any sense. And it goes
Right.
against her grandson's character, her character. The fact that the mom didn't do anything the whole movie was driving me crazy. She was acting like it wasn't her mother and it was just
Right.
some old lady that was around. That
Well,
drove
and
me
I think they
absolutely
got-
nuts.
I think they got around that by, you know, the doctors kind of like making up her mind for her. But at the same time, if I know, like, okay, like for me personally, having been to rehab, like when I went to rehab and I was telling my parents, like, hey, this is what they're doing and this is the stuff that's going on, my parents didn't just automatically side with the doctors. My parents were,
Right.
you know, and so I feel like, yeah, I feel like the mom is kind of just taking what the doctors say and then that's the be all end all and that's the decision she's making her decision based off of what she's being told, even though her mother's sitting here going like, dude, things are not okay. They're not okay.
Well, the grandson's saying that too, like at the beginning,
Right.
which is why it's so weird that he he has a line where he's like, they think it's best for you to stay here for right now, when she like asks him. I thought that was weird, and then he gives her the code, and I'm like, I just don't understand your point of view here at all. Like, what
was
good is
almost
going
like
to
they
come out of
needed it-
letting her out on her own, regardless of
Right.
mental illness or not? Like, that's, and I just don't, I don't know. That just didn't make any sense.
It almost seems like they should have had another character that embodied the opposite of the grandson, and then have that character be the one that ends up siding with her at the very end.
Like, yeah, if the
I think
mom
that would
had
have made more sense.
Absolutely. I think you're right. If the mom had been the one that kind of like started to piece it together at the diner or whatever,
Right.
like, I think that would have been really cool. And I don't know, man. It's just like all of this it's so close. That's what really
Yeah.
bums me out. This
Yeah.
movie was so close to being really, really cool. And the other problem is I feel like it was shot in a very generic way. I don't have anything really to say about the cinematography, the lighting,
No.
the color grading.
It was shot
any
well,
of that
but
stuff.
it didn't break any new ground.
Right, and it's not bad. It's just sort of
Right.
it looks nice.
Right.
And so for me, the whole thing just felt kind of meh. Like, the idea
Yeah.
is great. I love the idea so much, and it plays on everyone's fear of aging, and that first half is so crazy when her roommate comes running up to her and dies right next to her. All those moments are super creepy, and you're like, oh my God, what is happening? And then it just
Right.
doesn't live up to any of the stuff. I think the other part that did that for me was you can see the creature just a little bit too well in some of the fast shots. And the first time I saw him, it was like half an hour in or something. I was like, was that a tree man?
Groot.
I know.
That's what I was thinking when I saw it for the first time. My first thought was Groot.
Either Groot or, Treebeard from Lord of the Rings, like one of those. And I think that's
Is that what we come to find out? This is how the Ents are getting back at man. Is there's got to be a Lord of the Rings alternate universe in here somewhere.
because of those other references, it's hard for that to be scary for me.
Right.
I guess short of a tree man, it could have been demon or something. Like, I think that would have been a little bit scarier.
Or just go full Wicker Man and make it a bunch of honeybees.
Like, it could be anything weirder than Treebeard. I hate to keep saying that because it's like so weird and funny, but like that's what I kept thinking, and it's
Well,
I don't know.
but it makes sense when you think about it because the symbol that's on their bodies is the tree of life. And so it makes sense for it to be a tree creature.
but that doesn't make it cool or
No.
scary.
I mean, no, it doesn't make it cool or scary. And that's the big thing is like at no point in this movie was I scared.
No, not one single point.
I
Nope.
felt several different emotions through this movie, but at no point was one of them fear.
Yeah, that's a good
was-
point. That's a very good point.
And so that's the other reason why it's like if the movie doesn't do what the genre it fits in is meant to do, then is it really that movie? And so it almost makes it feel more like this is a thriller.
That's what I was.
versus a
That's
horror
exactly
movie.
what I was going to say. Is this movie is a thriller? This is not a horror movie, even though it kind of tries to be.
Well, I was going to say, if you watch the trailer, it's pushed as a horror movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. The trailer, which is one of the reasons we chose this movie, because when you and I are looking at movies to review, we watch the trailer most of the time together. And we watched the trailer and it felt like it was going to be a really interesting, weird horror movie.
Right.
And that's not what I walked away from, because you're right. I was not scared at all from this movie. And I think if that's the case, lean into the wackiness, just like we talked about with Malignant last time. Lean into it and make the tree guy a little bit more Evil Dead and a little bit less.
Embrace the camp.
Right. And that could have helped this a lot. But then I don't know. Then it would have been a little bit more memorable, I think, at least. So, okay, well, give us your final thoughts and what your overall rating is for this.
I'm going to rate this a 5 out of 10, simply for the sake of creativity.
Okay.
And Barbara Hershey. Barbara Hershey did a really, really good job in this movie. True. And again, there was a little bit of a personal connection with the relationship between her and her grandson. But at the end, I feel like the things that could have been cool fell flat, and eventually they just kind of started relying on tropes and cliches to just get the movie going along.
So what would you rate it? You said 5 out of 10?
I'd say 5 out of 10, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. As I'm one to do here, I'm going to read my Letterboxd. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. It's a very slow start, but once it gets going, it's pretty cool. Plays on some of the best horror people know, aging. It's something that everyone is afraid of, and this movie does a really good job of playing on those fears. Even at an hour 20, it still felt slow, and the beginning is a very strange pace. But about halfway through, it changes and gets a really cool premise going. Wasn't sure what to expect out of this, but I really liked it. 7 out of 10, which is interesting. I didn't think I'd be rating this higher than you, but...
No, I didn't either.
I did enjoy this. I don't think it's great by any standards, but I do think this is a fun thriller. It's not a horror movie.
No, it's definitely
not. It definitely should not have been presenting itself in that way.
Right.
But if it hadn't been, I don't know that we would have watched it. So...
That's true.
You know, I also don't know if evil tree monsters are parts of thrillers very often. You know what I mean? So it kind of falls in a weird space.
I think it does fall into the horror genre. I just don't think hardcore horror fans are going to enjoy it.
No, definitely not. And we should also mention it is an Amazon Prime exclusive, so you have to have Prime to watch it. I don't think they've put a physical copy of this out, as far as I know. I could be wrong.
But you can watch this without having to give Amazon more money on top of the money you're already giving to them.
Right.
Which is always nice.
Yeah.
And that's how a subscription works.
Well, usually, up until recently, Prime has been pretty good. I feel like Prime has kind of been letting me down recently. 7 out of 10 from me, 5 out of 10 from you. I think this is definitely worth watching. I don't think this is a complete skip. I don't think it's
I'm just not gonna go back and watch it, probably.
No, me neither. And even if they did put a physical release of this out, I would not buy it. So I do think it's a good movie.
Depends on how anxious I am to fill my shelf space back here.
Yeah. I do think 7 out of 10 is good. It's a good rating for a movie I'll probably never watch again. So all right, so if you guys like this, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're starting over from scratch here. We need all the help and subscribers that we can get to get more reach to more people. So thank you guys so much for watching this, and we will see you guys next time on From the Deep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.